This is the Wait For It podcast.
Hey everyone, welcome back to the Wait For It podcast. I'm your co-host, Phil Barrera, aka Phil the Filipino.
And I'm your other co-host, Mr. Eric Almighty, and it is the month of March, which typically means we are looking at films around this time of year that are Oscar worthy, and a movie that's been nominated this year. And although we're recording prior to the Oscars, and this is releasing after, a lot of talk is happening about a little film in Norway that we're covering today called Sentimental Value.
Yeah, it was a movie I wanted to try and add to my 50 movie list in 2025, just never got to it, couldn't commit the time, of course, when it comes to the international films that are heavily in another language. Of course, you want to make sure that you are locked in, and we were able to finally do that this month. So I'm going to talk about this film here today, as we always try and watch as many of these Oscar nominated films as we possibly can, as a couple of guys who just enjoy the movies. Are you going to get some next level in-depth discussion about what the colors and the background mean in Sentimental Value? No, but what you are going to get is a couple of guys that just enjoy film and appreciate that, and give our 2 cents and throw it out into the world, because we have a platform that we may or may not be using responsibly. Who knows? You guys are the ones that get to decide that. But if you want to learn, of course, everything else, or keep up with the Wait For It podcast and everything else that we are doing, make sure you stick around to the very end of the episode. We'll let you know where you can find all of that. But Eric, let's dive into it. Sentimental Value, of course, released in 2025. It was directed by... Should have looked this up ahead of time.
This is becoming a trend.
Trier? I looked up. I did not look that up ahead of time. I apologize to the director. And I'm also not going to read the tagline, because it's also... I did look up how to try and pronounce it, and I was like, nope, not going to butcher that, along with the name of the director. So, sisters Nora and Agnes reunite with their estranged father, the charismatic Gustav, a once renowned director who offers stage actress Nora a role in what he hopes will be his comeback film. When Nora turns it down, she soon discovers he has given her part to an eager young Hollywood star. So, Eric, let's go ahead and dive into this thing. What did you know, as we typically do with these episodes? What did you know about Sentimental Value? What do you know about its Oscar buzz? You kind of touched on it a little bit. I think the one thing we certainly knew was the praise that Stellan Skarsgård was getting from this film.
Yeah, I mean, obviously, probably the biggest name for general audiences tied to this movie, but it really came down to the cast, Phil. When I saw the first trailer and then I heard a lot about the performances in this movie, I wasn't shocked to then see it be nominated for a minimum of like 8 different Academy Awards. And it is, I believe, clearly the front runner. I would be surprised when this episode drops if it's too bold to say that it's the front runner and that it will have won Best International Film at the Oscars, because a lot of people are buzzing about not only the cast, but the individual performances. And that's really what I think stood out the most to me. I mean, you've got names internationally that we probably aren't as familiar with, but then there are names that we're familiar with. You mentioned Stellan Skarsgård. Elle Fanning is in this as well. So again, not just your average cast. There are some heavy hitters here, both on the domestic and international sides.
Yeah, so Stellan Skarsgård, it's always just nice to see him in a project and just be reminded of how misused he has been in the MCU. They have him, running around naked, I think, in, what was it, Thor Ragnarok or some whatever, whichever Thor it was, Thor The Dark World, I don't know. So it's a nice reminder that he is one of the best actors out there. So I guess we will start with those performances here, because obviously there's technically 4 characters that we spend the most amount of time with. One, of course, being Gustav Borg, who was mentioned there, Stellan Skarsgård, Nora, who is the daughter, and then, of course, Agnes. And those are Renee. Oh, gosh, I am so sorry. I should have looked these up ahead of time. We'll just say first names. Inga, and then Renee, who play the sisters. And then, of course, Elle Fanning, who plays Rachel Kemp, who is the English actress that is in the American actress that is in this film. There's going to be some heavy criticisms here about this film here on my end in just a moment, and then one where I'm going to get a little vulnerable and real about how I felt, how this movie made me feel when it kind of wrapped up. But I will say, as far as this family dynamic goes, when we're talking about the Borg family, it's very much steeped in realism. This felt like a real family. There was real trauma here. There were real consequences of everybody's actions, of course, specifically when it came to Gustav. This is a story I think we've probably seen before when it comes to family trauma and when a parent not necessarily understanding what their role was in all of this. And it definitely felt like you were watching a real lived-in family that went through all of these things. And that's honestly, what is that if that is not what movies are supposed to be. Like I bought in to them, having this really checkered past, and that I was able to at least partially enjoy, even if some of the other things that we'll talk about here in just a moment didn't necessarily land fully for me.
Yeah, so, and taking that as your first takeaway, I think I'll kind of transition into mine, which was going to be that this feels like a very concentrated story that you can tell people have lived in. Like, it felt very genuine and very vulnerable when it came to the characters and the way they interacted with each other. You could really tell there was a sense of history there. And then while we get like bits and pieces of that history, I think I would have liked to explore that a little bit more, potentially, when it comes to connecting with all of the characters. I definitely think this was a world that was lived in, and the characters that were presented to us, I think it was very well done from top to bottom. And again, it goes back to those individual and collaborative performances across the board. Like, I don't know that there was a bad performance at all in this movie, and that kind of speaks to the ensemble cast themselves. I know they did open up casting as a category for the Oscars now. If it wasn't for Sinners, I do think an argument can definitely be made for this movie, and I think that speaks volumes. But again, from the characters to the performances, I think this just was a concentrated story you could really appreciate, and I think you can either really connect with, or, and maybe this happened to you, could be really triggering, or could evoke some other emotions. So that definitely was present, even if I didn't personally relate to all of those triggering moments.
Yeah, definitely, 100%. That was that's a good way to put it. Not a bad performance in this film whatsoever, all the way down to the supporting cast as well. So definitely with you on that point. Moving on to my second takeaway, really would love to hear how you feel and felt about pacing. This is a slow burn, and we have watched a lot of those types of films here on this series, and really just on this podcast in general, and we very much heavily vibe with them. So because even though I bought into this family dynamic 100%, it doesn't mean that I was interested in it though. The pacing, the slow burn structure, the other film that we watched most recently, which I believe we also covered an international feature that I also thought of that was a slow burn, was Past Lives. Jesus Christ, I don't know why I just had
that's a big one.
I just had a panic attack. It's like number 5 on my international features. Past Lives is a very slow burn, and it is a lot of very quiet storytelling. There's a lot of quiet storytelling in this, down to the part of where, like, it almost feels like this home itself is like haunted, of course, with the past, and you sit in a lot of those moments that are really sad and devastating. And then there are some parts of this where I am genuinely interested in, like, what happened with this family in the past. Like, she goes to the library and looks up, her grandmother, and how all of that happened, and her being arrested by the police, the secret police, and going through all that. That part is interesting to me. But again, the family dynamic of it, and because of the pacing structure, and all that, which I know is like one of the things that people love about this, which is why I gave that disclaimer in the beginning. Like, this, I'm just here watching a movie and taking it in as a regular guy. And for this, it just was not doing a really great job to keep me captivated. Not to say that the movie doesn't do this well, just for me, just wasn't it.
No, and I think that kind of ties into my like compliment of the film is that this seems like a world that's lived in. I did kind of allude to the fact that we get like little bits and pieces on the, you know, on the bread trail. We get the crumbs on the bread trail of what probably went down. You could kind of fill in the gaps, but I think for a movie that's going to be over 2 hours long, it's going to also be partially in English, but also partially again in another language. I think it's tough. I think it's tough, especially for an international film, to pull that off with a domestic audience. And I think for me, my second takeaway is that there's a lot of discomfort in this movie. You're kind of sitting in a lot of the ugly and in a lot of tension, but there's not that levity. There's really no funny moment in this movie. You know, Stellan Skarsgård will crack the occasional joke, but outside of that, there's not a lot of charm. There's not a lot of laughter or any type of like levity to like just reduce that tension, reduce that uncomfort and discomfort. So I think that's probably my biggest takeaway when it comes to the pacing. I probably would have been okay with it more if it had that. You brought up Past Lives, a much different movie, but the movie I thought of was Perfect Days, which is going to be something I consider to be ranked a little higher than this when we get to our rankings. That movie is a slow burn, but there are some entertaining moments with the Somber that kind of give you what you need to work with the pacing. And I think I appreciated it more now than ever, considering this movie, I also did struggle with the length of time, how we got from point A to point B. It's a very concentrated story, just takes a long time. And that's life, man. That's life. And I guess you can appreciate that. But unless you really deeply connected with the movie, I think it does become an issue the longer the movie goes on. Though it does, I think, end strong. I think it's an issue, especially towards the middle.
Yeah, a lot of the other film some other people are bringing up here, again, totally different movie, but Anatomy of a Fall, which again is another one we watched very recently. There's a lot of very quiet storytelling. There's a lot of just watching how the facial expressions are and watching their body language. There's a lot of that in Anatomy of a Fall, which again ultimately will be another movie that I thought I very much more enjoyed over this one. Yeah, Perfect Days is a great example as well. Again, a very, very quiet film, that I enjoyed much more than this one too. So we're just entering like a weird space here, because I know like Hollywood loves this thing and it's going to come away with gold, and I totally get it. And that's why it's like, man, I hope this doesn't leave intended audiences, because it's more gonna get cooked for whatever it is that we say here. Yeah, great talk. My third one here is again where I'll get a little vulnerable and just kind of talk about how this movie made me feel personally when it comes to, of course, the dynamic here when we're talking about a parent who is an absent parent, but also someone who just kind of shows up as if nothing is wrong. And there's like this trope in Hollywood, and maybe it is a generational thing. This film has a persistent push to make us empathize with the dad, and it feels like they're trying a little bit too hard to like redeem him and soften some of the things that he has done in favor of like some kind of redemption or like rehabilitation. You know what I mean? And it just wore me out that we had to continue to go back to that well when he's consistently ignoring what his daughters are telling him. But he's just like, well, come on, like everything is fine. Like just let him, let your son be in the movie. And all of that just felt very tipped to one side of the scale. Like when the finale showed up and, and the movie ends in a pretty predictable way, I think, I still don't feel like he has earned that response from his family. And again, all families are different, but just speaking from somebody from my end who has all this family shit that, again, I'm sure everybody has that. It just felt a little bit delusional here on my end to think that after going through the script, she had a change of heart. And that just rubbed me the wrong way. So that's definitely a big reason for the score that I gave it. But when we'll talk about scores here in a moment, but I could not give it any less than what I did, because I still recognize that this is a really, really well-made film, but it's one that I don't ever want to watch again, and I probably won't think about once this episode has ended going forward.
Yeah, there's a lot to unpack with that we might discuss, in a small spoiler section. This movie, again, is a 2025 film, so we're not going to talk about anything too heavy into spoilers. But it's actually really funny, Phil, although and again, we all have our family stuff, right? Like, there's definitely some things I related to personally from this movie. I just think not as deeply as you and others, especially those that I think have had that abandonment feeling with a sibling that they were extremely close to, and especially being maybe two females, even more so, right? They talked a little bit about being a female in the, line of work that she was in, and talking about being an actress and how sometimes that was a little bit harder. They made those references in the film. So there are some things that I think you can really grab onto and emotionally and deeply connect with. Despite that, my third takeaway was actually going to be one specific scene and a call out that I don't know if you would agree with or not. Without getting into spoilers, I thought that the scene with Stellan Skarsgård, Gustav, and then the actress that plays Agnes, the secondary sister, you would say, the supporting actress in this, the conversation they have about putting the son in this movie, and where she finally has a moment to kind of find the courage to have a conversation, to be combative. And that was really compelling to me. I really liked that. And then my brain said, I wonder, and this is maybe my last takeaway, I wonder if this film would have been more interesting with Agnes as our primary focus versus Nora. Because I think because Nora was our focus, and she is such a headstrong, stubborn character that also is desperately seeking approval and, naturally calls herself a fuck up because of her childhood and all of that, right? Like, I think by the time you get to that ending, it does feel like a happy ending in a way, although I did still sense there wasn't a lot of redemption there. I still sense that it wasn't about really getting his way as much as it was telling that story that I think they found connection in. But I could see your point of view on that because Nora was the primary character we were really kind of following. And I found Agnes's story to just be a little bit more interesting. And I think that scene between her and Gustav specifically was probably the highlight of the film for me, which was like in the final 30 minutes of the runtime.
Yeah, that is a really interesting take. Yeah, and I think because Agnes is, she's got a family. She's not an actress. She's very much kind of settled into her role, and I think that's also why she is certainly less combative to as far as Nora. She was the one who I think really just kind of accepted what was happening from the get-go and just kind of moved on with her life. So yeah, I definitely agree with you because there is a point I think with a lot of adults when it comes to their parents where they have that moment where they stand up for themselves, where they haven't been able to do that before. And it doesn't even have to be a parent. It could be a friend. It could be a romantic partner. It could be anybody where they have that little bit of courage and then finally that comes through and, they ultimately bring to light what someone else has always tried to gloss over, again, parent, sibling, whatever it may be. So yeah, that's a really, really interesting take because Nora, as far as her feelings about Gustav, like she's set, right? I mean, obviously it changes, a little bit later and things change and things soften, but she is pretty steadfast, like you said, throughout the entire film until, again, like you said, like the last half hour of the movie where there's just this theme of speed running to the ending with some of the movies we're watching here lately. But yeah, that's a really That's an interesting take. I hadn't thought of that whatsoever, but that was one of the standout moments for sure. Is when, and just speaking again as somebody who has at different points in my life found my voice in different situations. I agree that was definitely a really great scene and pivotal scene for sure.
Yeah, I don't know how I would feel about Stellan Skarsgård as my father, but I can tell you this: if we ever get the pleasure to do an interview with a big actor or director, the last thing I want to be called is a TikTok troll and have them storm out. That was a new fear unlocked for me.
Yeah. No, if we ever end up on one of these media circuits and are on a red carpet or something like that, we can't go viral for the wrong reason. We work too hard to get to that point. And as we continue to get great, good feedback on our interview skills, we can't. That is one of my greatest fears. We ask one bad question, and that's the one that goes viral.
You know what I think about all the time? I think about like some of those really bad ones. Like, remember that one guy that like pressed Robert Downey Jr. about his drug issues like over and over, and then he stormed out. Where is that guy? Is that guy
the guy
okay?
That shot Tom Cruise with a water gun?
Oh yeah, yeah.
That guy's dead.
What happened to those people? You know what I mean?
Yeah.
Like just dumb stuff.
We want to be the guy interviewing Ryan Gosling at the Grand Canyon.
Yes, that's exactly what we want. Yeah,
Are
absolutely.
you in a volcano?
You gotta look like Tom Cruise.
He's
with
trying
the hair.
to ask questions, and he's like, "Do you have water?"
You okay? Yeah. No, that was grade A quality interview there that we can only hope to achieve one day.
Yeah.
But yeah, that new fear unlocked for me for sure after watching that.
Yeah, hopefully that does not happen to us. But anything else, Eric? Any other minor takeaways? I do want to read a little excerpt from a Letterboxd review that really sums up what I felt here in just a moment. It does kind of dip into like a little spoiler territory, so I don't want to say it quite yet. Any other small takeaways that you want to mention?
No. We can maybe put that spoiler warning now, unless you want to give the scores first, potentially, and then go into that to kind of kick off the spoiler talk. Yeah,
let's definitely do that. No surprise here that this thing is scored very, very high, pretty much across the board. 96% certified fresh score, tomato meter score, 94% popcorn meter score from audiences, 7.8 over on IMDb, and then over on Letterboxd, it is sitting at a 4.2. I don't know, maybe controversially gave this a 3 out of 5 because, again, like I said, cannot go any lower than that because I recognize it as a accomplishment when it comes to film. This is not what's that shit movie we watched a couple of years ago? This is not an Emilia Perez situation. That is not what is happening here. I understand why people who are very much entrenched in filmmaking and things of that nature that have a much better understanding than I do, why they would appreciate this film. For me, just wasn't something that I would like to really ever revisit. Again, it's going to, and my ranking will also reflect that when it comes to some of the other international films that we watch. But yeah, 3 out of 5 for me, Eric. What about you?
Yeah, so we are going to land right on the same score at a 3 out of 5. You know, I really kind of sat on this film and I really thought about what I was feeling watching it. And it invoked a lot of emotions. I can imagine it evoked a lot of emotions in other people, as I mentioned earlier. But when I just kind of judge the movie on its merit, on its own, I think there's so much stuff from generational trauma to the death of film and the move to streaming and all of these type of different topics filtered through this one story that kind of comes out very prevalently in a lot of the characters' dialogue. I just kind of felt both overwhelmed and a little underwhelmed with everything. There was so much to kind of look through and comb through, and then there just wasn't enough meat on the bone when it came to some of the backgrounds of this story. So I really just stuck at a 3 out of 5 because I also acknowledge that this is a beautiful movie to look at. There are some cinematic stuff that we are not film bros enough to call them out in our takeaways. I'm sure that also bumps up the score for some people. The movie looks good. The movie's acted good. And it's not a bad film at all. I just don't think it resonated with me in any meaningful way where I would want to watch it again. And if I ever saw it on the television, like, there's not anything outside of that one scene that I probably would go back to willingly. It would definitely be something that if it happens to be on, I'd check it out. But even then, I don't know how much of a sit down I would want to do a second time around for this one. And that's what makes my score a little disappointing, considering some of the hype around this movie in film circles in general.
Yeah, I think a really good measurement of what we do here on the podcast, Eric, is would we want to have people over and watch this movie with them? And for this, no. Like, we wouldn't. Definitely would want to hear what people in our lives have to say about it, like other people that have watched it. Maybe it resonated totally differently with them, and obviously it has. It's got, people really, really love this film. So, yeah, this isn't one of those, like, I would definitely have people over to watch Past Lives, or watch A Perfect Days on a movie night with somebody. So, yeah, but this one would definitely, like you said, be one that I wouldn't necessarily sit down and watch. This is the excerpt from the review that really kind of summed up how I felt when it came to how the film treated Gustav and ultimately kind of forgave him. So it says here, there is, however, something in the film that personally irritated me. Its almost desperate attempt to make me empathize with the father, to convince me that his wounds matter, that his failures are forgivable, that he is not only bad, not cruel, not malicious, just damaged, misunderstood, and burdened. I understand the intention and I recognize the nuance, but the constant insistence becomes exhausting. It's as if the film were constantly nudging me, whispering, feel for him, understand him, see how he suffers too. And for me, all this coaxing has the opposite effect. I don't like it when the narrative seems so invested in rescuing a character that it softens the sharper truths that might otherwise give the story more honesty. That really, really summed it up right then and there. This is a much longer review, but that little excerpt right there kind of really summed up again how I felt about how the film was treating Gustav as if he wasn't a grown man and he didn't make his own mistakes, and he didn't have to live with them.
Yeah, it's tough because I can respect that angle of it all. Now that we're kind of freely talking spoilers here, there was a lot of discussion about his mom and her suicide, and then obviously a lot of the allusions to Nora and stuff that she went through, and I don't know, like, this is what I mean by it's like a lot of information. It's a lot of stuff left to the unseen eye. It's kind of thrown out there for you to potentially sort out for yourself and figure it out, or it's left to the imagination. And I really wish there was just a little bit more concrete stuff that if they wanted to go with a forgiveness angle, which I don't know that was the point. I don't know that that's what they were fully intending to do, personally, from my point of view. But if they were going that route, and that's the way that you took it, I feel like validating that a little bit more with a little bit of the history of why he's like that and what caused these things. Big moments like the divorce that happens, right? And when they get together and they have the kids, like, you don't see any part of their lives from that time period, and it's just all left to the imagination, where again, you could watch it and think it's a forgiveness ending, and I could watch it and I could say, I think there was some acceptance that he's a flawed person. That's the way I kind of took it by the end, even though they are doing that film together. He is constantly back in their lives, and I don't think he's a bad person. I don't think he's doing it maliciously, and she clearly wants some type of love from him and attention. I mean, from the moment they sit down in the diner, she's like, oh, you actually, like, I want to know what you think about my work, right? Those are the type of things that Nora is constantly saying, even though she doesn't want to believe it. When she does her show and he doesn't show up, she's visibly bothered by it. So I don't know, that part was predictable, was them finally connecting by the end. I just didn't see it that way, but I think, Phil, this film's left to too much interpretation where that shouldn't be a problem. I think it would have been a stronger film if we just had a little bit more to chew on.
Yeah, I definitely agree. And again, it's also going to depend personally on how on how somebody that watches it and how they feel about forgiveness when it comes to family trauma and all that kind of stuff. And I have very strong opinions about that, and so somebody else who has been through something very similar could feel very, very differently. So again, we'll love to hear what other people thought and hear their criticisms or their likes and dislikes as well. So definitely let us know. Eric, anything else you want to mention when it comes to this movie? Again, we definitely glad that we checked it out. Did you also? Oh, we want to know. Obviously, we have to go over where this ranks in our international feature list. Did you also add it to your 2025 list? Because I did.
Oh no, I did not. That is a great call out. I will do that right now as we talk. If you want to tell us where it landed on yours.
Yeah, I feel really bad about this when it comes to the 2025 list. But remember, I gave a lot of 2025 films pretty high grade. And also, we got to remember, which one of these movies am I ever going to watch again? This brought it up to 52 on as far as how many 2025 movies that I watched. It's at 42 because, again, I don't ever want to watch it again, but it is still a 3 out of 5. It's not as low as some of the other movies that I have here on my list. But it is also pretty low on the international list for me. I have it sitting at 32 behind movies such as Decision to Leave and All Quiet on the Western Front, but before The Host, Hero, and Belle.
Yeah. I'm trying to think. I mean, I don't really... Phil, you have Sentimental Value below Anaconda. Can we have a conversation really quick?
No, I'd much rather watch Anaconda again before I watch this.
Okay. There's really not much left to say there other than I guess I'll just jump into my list.
Two very different 3 out of 5s.
It's a vast difference. 2025 films, I put this at 36. It's probably my lowest rated 3 out of 5 because it's an objectively better movie than every single film I'm about to list off up until a certain point. It is lower than Fantastic Four, better movie. Lower than Wicked for Good, better movie. Lower than The Naked Gun, better movie. Lower than Mickey 17, better movie. Lower than Ballerina, better movie. Lower than Nona's, better movie. I think when we get to Frankenstein, Thunderbolts, Avatar, Fire and Ash, so on and so forth, I think that's probably where it belongs.
You think this is better than Mickey 17?
I really maybe Mickey 17 gets the edge because at least there's funny moments, and I love Robert Pattinson in the lead role. Between him and Naomi Ackie.
Ryan Cole Levy gave Mickey 17 a 2. we had to talk to him.
We got to talk to him. I'm sure he was just as disappointed
as we are. Not that ours was like so much higher, but yeah.
I think as a film from I think the thing I hold against Mickey 17 the most is the ensemble cast.
Sure.
Like outside of Robert Pattinson and Naomi Ackie, like basically carrying that movie for me, I didn't really like a lot of the other characters in that movie specifically, and we know.
What do you mean? I was gonna say you absolutely love Mark Ruffalo.
I don't. On the international feature list side of things, I put the movie at 33. This is below films like Perfect Days, Belle, Battle Royale, Blue Eye Samurai, but above things like The Boy and the Heron, The Host, The First Slam Dunk. So very slightly above some of those films. And it could be, again, I just can't give it less than a 3 because objectively, I could understand why the film is nominated for Best International Film. But I just, again, don't think I vibed with it. Speaking of which, is this the first Norwegian film that we watched? Or is it the second? It was, I think we watched a Denmark film. So yeah, this is our first Norwegian film, I believe.
Another round? Is another round?
Is Denmark, Netherlands, Sweden.
Yeah.
So is that all the same stuff? I'm feeling like I made a mistake. I'm just categorizing them all together. I don't know. I don't know where that is on a map. I couldn't tell you where Norway is.
Europeans.
Okay, cool. It's one of those islands.
Another round, another movie that also sits in silence a lot, that we very much enjoyed. And the movie that sits in the most of silence, Banshees of Inisherin, which is yet to be topped.
Is yet to be topped. Yeah, and again, that movie, so fucking good. I gotta watch it. I say this every time. I gotta watch it so I can bump it up to that 5, man. I can't wait to watch it again. I'm just gonna sit down, have a really good time. Watch party. Let's do it.
For a great watch party. Obviously, there are a couple of movies that aren't in yours and vice versa, but be a good time. Be a really good time. Imagine watching RRR and K-pop Demon Hunters in the same night.
What a wild...
What a time.
Yeah, and then we'll just like fit in
time.
Old Boy probably to
No,
wrap
let's
it all up,
probably
right?
not. Let's actually, we can leave that one.
Leave that one to the side.
Leave that
Okay.
one out. Yeah, let's
okay.
do Old Boy and Grave of the Fireflies in the same night.
Yeah. Let's let's have the complete
Train to
opposite.
Busan. Train to Busan in there too.
Yeah, we got to mix it up.
Boy. Okay. Well, again, let us know what you thought about Sentimental Value. If you are also one of those people that likes to watch all of the Oscar films, we definitely would love to know what you guys think. And if you want to keep up with the Wait For It podcast, everything that we are doing, make sure to click the Linktree link in the show notes of this and every single episode. You can follow us over on social media at Instagram and TikTok. Join our growing and thriving Discord community. Follow us over on Twitch, where we stream every other week. And head on over to your favorite podcast player. Leave us 5 stars, whether it be Spotify, Apple Podcasts, whatever it is that you choose to listen to us on. All of that will be greatly appreciated. Make sure to follow myself over on my personal page as I continue to keep everybody updated with my voiceover journey. And make sure you follow Eric on his personal Twitch account, where he streams multiple times each and every single week. And if you want to support the show and get some behind the scenes stuff, get episodes a little bit early, or participate in the content that we will be releasing, Eric will let you know a little bit more about that before wrapping us up.
Yes, all the free stuff Phil mentioned, very great for the show. You know what's even better? If you go above and beyond and join our Patreon, where patrons of the show, Briar, T3 Kato, Vintage, Corey from The World Is My Burrito, Nick Casbaro, the author of the Vitalarium series, and Botter from the Shortbox podcast, are supporting us monthly in exchange for things like behind the scenes and early access to episodes like this one. And April is going to be Patreon month. We typically do a couple of these every single year, and this is the first one of 2026, where we're going to be watching movies and or shows, plus playing games on stream that are recommended by the community. So if you want to be a part of that, make sure to join our Patreon today. If you can't, all the free stuff is more than enough to keep the show rolling, and we will see you on the next one. My name is Mr. Eric Almighty. That is my co-host, Phil the Filipino. We release new episodes every Wednesday, and all you have to do is wait for it.
This is the Wait For It podcast.